Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds, and happy 2026. Happy New Year. Um, Sorry that my voice is kind of rough today. Um, I got sick over vacation and it is a little rough, but we are going to persevere and we're going to get through it. And I look like a mess, and I was so excited to show you my new haircut. But yeah. So we're just going to kind of go with it. We're going to see how everyone did over break. Oh, yeah. I'm Rosebud Reads. Hello. And welcome to my wonderful book garden. I'm not sure if I'll keep up the Christmas holiday decor for super long or if I'll change it to Valentine's Day sooner rather than later. We'll see. But anyway, welcome back. Welcome to the first of book 4 of Thousand Autumns. I'll kind of give it a minute to see if anyone comes in. But in any case, I do not own anything. I'm not sponsored. I just do this for fun. Seven Seas and the author own Thousand Autumns. I do not. So please don't come at me. I'm doing this because I can. But anyway, yeah, I think I see someone come. Hello. Yeah, I had a nice vacation until I got sick. And I could do without that. But hello, Truffle. How you doing today? Happy New Year. I hope you are starting off the year with a bang. I'm really excited that you're starting it off with me. That's really sweet. I unfortunately have a cold, so it's not going to be as clear of a recording as usual. There will be some nose blowing. Yeah, it's a little rough. My mom is a retired nurse, though, so she checked my lungs, so we're good there. So, yeah. Happy New Year, Annika. I hope it's been a good one. Hi, Chi Chi Kiki. Happy New Year. Hope it's a good one so far. I mean, day one. I'm excited you all have decided to spend it with me. But how's everybody been? Have some of you been enjoying some of the fanfics? I know there's a lot of them. So it's totally cool. If not, I'm just kind of curious, like which ones people liked, if they liked them, like all that. Also, we've got the lights on today because I'm giving myself all the help I can get today. So, ooh, you finished Beauty's Blade. How was it? How was it? Oh, good. So I think the first one was Bride Snatching and the second one was Stage. Those two are good. It was great. Glad to hear it. I am still working through Copper Coin, but I did manage to finish over break. Thrice Married to Salted Fish. The wife comes first, and Mistakenly Saving the Villain. And then I think there was one more. Only complaint is that there isn't more. Is it just a one shot? Yeah. Time Traveling Longxian. Yeah, I like that one because it definitely takes on a more crackier edge to things. And it's a bit more lighthearted. It also involves a lot more characters than just Wei Wuxi and Lan Wangji, which is kind of nice. But no, I will definitely scooch that one higher up on the list to read, Truffle. Fu Wanqing. Okay. All right. Did anyone do anything super exciting? I mean, I went and visited family and had some good food, good times. We played some games. They live in warmer weather, so it was interesting, but not bad. My only complaint is I got sick, but Oh, good. Ooh, you got Beauty Blade for Christmas. Nice. I ended up getting the second Din Fingi book in the series. And also, speaking of Christmas, I did end up getting this for my niece and nephew, which is very cute. It's a blue Yeti, which I thought was very sweet of them. Nice chilled Christmas is good. Right? Oh, they also gave me this inside of it. It's super cute. They found it at a Krampus festival, so it's perfect. It's a little Yeti. Aw, nice. Yeah, I like that they actually went and picked it out. So that makes it extra special. I ended up giving my nephew this little alligator, like fat alligator statue that's like this big. And apparently my friend was like, "Oh, you mean Greg?" I was like, "Greg?" Apparently it's a statue of this little alligator Greg. But my nephew absolutely loved it. He ended up getting a vinyl player. Both him and his sister got a vinyl player each, and some vinyls, which I think it's wild that vinyls are coming back. But hey, everything comes around like every 20 years, so not that surprised. But he put Greg right on top of the vinyl that was playing, so Greg just spun around and around. Like they're pretty cool. My grandpa used to have like a ton in the basement, but we got rid of a lot of them when he passed away. So missed opportunity. But we wouldn't have been able to like store them, all that. Oh, she got you a new MP3 player? Very nice. Um, I like the thoughtful gifts or the surprise gifts that people don't know are coming. Apparently the record players are now like super affordable. So just a thought, Annika. But yeah. By the way, it is the first stream of book 4, so that does mean we have a blind box. So we're going to do another one of these. So the ones we have already are this one, and this one. So I think the one that I kind of want... No, did we get this one? I think we got this one instead. I kind of want the engineer one. Let's see if we get the engineer. Okay, I'm not going to look at what it is. I want to be surprised. All right, let's see. Oh, I was wrong. We didn't get the mushroom. Now we got the mushroom. I must have known. That's really pretty. I'm going to turn on just white light for a second. There we go. Super cute. I really like the top design and like the little hanging parts. Like, I just like how well made Emma is. They're always so pretty, but also like they're hefty as well. Like it's just good quality. So today I'm being super lazy. We're gonna pop this one right up here so it can look at me and be happy. I am super sorry for all the coughs. Soundtrack. You know what? I don't want that green. We'll do the slightly other green. And then we've got the card. So this will be our bookmark. Oh, that's cute. Here's the card. The Traveler. Nice. And yes, heft is very nice when you're talking about figures. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get to it. Go ahead and start. I don't really have much else to add. I had a nice New Year with some friends. We played some board games. I made my longevity soup, which is basically just fancy ramen because it's a tradition my aunt actually started with me. So in Asia, apparently, like either on New Year's Eve or on New Year's, I'm not 100% clear. You're supposed to eat noodles by like slurping and not breaking the noodles, and it's supposed to be good luck / longevity in the new year. So I started doing that. But this year I made my own soup. Yeah, you did that today. Nice. Did you like it? How'd it turn out? Nice. No, I am totally all for substitutions. Oh my goodness, these bangs are not working right now. I've got a new haircut and I like it. It's just, I'm learning how to have it. I'm not used to bangs yet, but I want bangs. So we're figuring out bangs. There we go. Maybe. It's fine. It turned out really good. I'm glad to hear that. Good. Well, all right. We're going to just go ahead and get started. Thousand Autumns, Book 4. All good. It is a pretty nice light soup as long as you don't like overboil it, which I kind of did, but tasted good. That's what matters. Thank you. Okay. So, last time, Shen Qiao, wrong book. Shen Qiao came in like a badass, saved the kiddos from the city, reunited with some of the generals, saved the nephew, either prince or nephew. Yeah, I'm trying to rock the bangs. I have a bit of like the rocker or like 80s look right now, and I'm kind of loving it. It looks nice when it's pulled back too, which I appreciate. But I'm letting the curl do its thing. But anyway, so basically Shen Qiao came in again, saved some orphans, except one's not actually an orphan. One of them's the prince or nephew, but royalty, who people were coming after. One of them was our lovely Mr. Donkey Sandwiches. No, I feel that. Annika. But basically Shen Qiao either took him out or scared him off. And yeah, the son of a prince. One of them is royalty. And the current emperor that just took over is not cool with that. So he was like, yeah, he needs to go. And the other is the daughter of like the general or one of the families there that ended up seeing the now emperor kill the previous emperor. Great niece. Okay. There we go. But he saved both of them. reunited with the girl's father. And now they're going, and that's kind of where we are now. If I'm forgetting anything, just leave it in the comments, or chat. Depending, I might need to take a tea break in between, but I think this chunk isn't too bad, but we will see. All right, chapter 86, Send Off. Oh wait, I gotta get out our timestamps. 1 second. Okay, 86. All right, I'm just gonna put 16 because that is almost exactly how much it is. Oh yeah, and this friend came. He's adorable, and I love him. This was also a Christmas present. Okay, and on that note, we continue. He is so floofy. He's just gonna hang out here with me and make me feel better. Okay. Very cute. 86. Send off. A land cloud is very much a land cloud. Zhangsun Sheng had spoken the truth. The jade dew pills truly were outstandingly effective. Shen Qiao took 2, and after he'd waited a few moments and circulated the Shu Yang strategy's true qi through his body, he found his meridians cleared up. His blood and qi flowed freely, and the muffled pain in his chest gradually lessened. Man, if only. No longer was it an immense effort to simply say a few words. You and me both, buddy. He bade farewell to Zhangsun Sheng and Duo Yi, and then lifted Yuwen Song with him onto the horse. So that's who we were talking about. To help the boy adjust, he deliberately set the pace at a slower trot while turning his head to look back. The city of Chang'an towered behind them, as majestic as it had always been. Although scoured by flames of war, it still stood lofty and unshakable. However, over these hundreds and thousands of years, the people have changed. The dynasties replaced. After a couple of years, perhaps even the tragic, unjust death that Yuwen Xian had suffered would be forgotten by most. Duo Yan held her father's hand as she watched the two leave without blinking. Then she raised her voice and yelled, "Take care, esteemed Taoist Master Shen! Take care, Yuwen Qiang! Yuwen Qilong!" Shen Qiao smiled at her, but then he noticed that Yuwen Song, who was sitting in front of him, hadn't spoken a word. He asked, "Do you wish to take another look at Chang'an?" "Once we leave, there's no saying how long it will be before we can return." Yuwen Song was silent for a moment, then said, "It's a place of sorrow, so looking at it will only bring me more sorrow. I only hate how powerless I am, that I could do nothing but watch as my parents suffered injustice." He was even younger than Shiwu, yet the words from his mouth were mature beyond his age. Shiwu had wept uncontrollably the day he lost his master. As for Yuwen Song, he'd cried back at the Sioux residence, and at this moment his voice was dull and hoarse. But his words remained clear and articulate. He was many times stronger than Shiwu. Thinking about it now, perhaps all children from the royal family were like this. Duo Yan, too, when Shen Qiao had been carrying her, had neither panicked nor struggled despite the treacherous situation she was in, and thus hadn't hampered Shen Qiao as he'd faced the enemy. Shen Qiao caressed his head. "Don't think of it that way. Originally, your father could have fled without issue, but he insisted on staying. First, because he was unwilling to leave your mother and brothers to face danger by themselves, and second, so they could demonstrate his innocence and loyalty to the emperor and the world. Perhaps some people wouldn't understand, but as his son, you surely do, don't you?" Yuwen Song made a sound of assent. Then, after a long while, he whispered, "In truth, father had already made some arrangements." He wanted Mother and the rest to leave at the first opportunity, but Mother also didn't want to leave Father to face the danger alone. My brothers, too, none of them were willing to leave. I was the youngest, so Uncle Yan forcibly brought me away. Yes, said Shen Qiao. During our time in this world, everyone has to make their own choices. Some will choose to preserve their lives at all cost, and some will choose to give up their lives for their reputation or to demonstrate their innocence. In all cases, there is nothing to criticize. Only during the darkest hour will one's true self emerge. So many people were willing to secretly assist the Prince of Qi, and the Su family was even willing to stand up for him against the Emperor. Clearly, everyone knew how moral the Prince of Qi was. No amount of slander would be able to change this. Since someone has entrusted me with this duty, I must ensure that you arrive somewhere safe. Do you have any relatives you can turn to? Yeah, I agree. Poor kid. He'd originally planned to bring Yuwen Song back to Bixia sect on Mount Tai, but having seen that this child had his own views despite his young age, he decided to ask his opinion instead of making the decision for him. Yuwen Song shook his head. The Yuwen family's relatives are all from the royal family. Even if someone was willing to take me in, if the higher-ups pursue the matter, they'll eventually end up implicated. Yuwen Yun has already killed my father and 3 other members of the royal family who were all prestigious and respected, so I'll have no scruples about killing more to strengthen his authority. I'll go wherever you go, Taoist Master Shen. All right, said Shen Qiao. Then we'll head to Bixia sect. Where's Bixia sect? On Mount Tai. Sure enough, Yuwen Song's interest was piqued. Mount Tai, as in the first of the 5 sacred mountains? Shen Qiao smiled. Correct. Mount Tai lies within a mountain range, the finest in all the world. The red clouds at sunrise are peerlessly beautiful. If you see them in person, you'll never regret it. Yuwen Song was still young, after all, so he was easily distracted. Though he was heartbroken when he heard Shen Qiao's description, he couldn't help the look of slight anticipation that tinted his face. Yuwen Yun had always feared Yuwen Xian's prestige, fearing that dragging things out could lead to disadvantageous charges. He first dispatched his men to surround the Prince of Qi's residence, forcing Yuwen Xian into hiding. Everyone else only took this to mean that Yuwen Yun was still unwilling to kill him and thus dropped their guard. No one expected that Yuwen Yun would suddenly launch an attack and have Miran Shin kill his own uncle. Unwilling to endure the humiliation, the entirety of the Prince of Qi's residence had committed suicide. Committed unaliving in front of the messengers. This news had already spread, and the entire city was now in shock. As everyone mourned Yuwen Xian, they also began to send memorial after memorial indicting the emperor's underlings, Chen Gong and the others. This was an implicit accusation towards the emperor as well, and there were also people secretly doing their utmost to keep the emperor occupied, to prevent him from dispatching men outside the city to capture Shen Qiao and Yuwen Song. As a result, Shen Qiao and Yuwen Song did not see a single pursuing soldier for many days on their journey out of Chang'an. As for the people of Hehuan sect, Shen Qiao had killed 2 of their elders at once, and there was now a deep blood feud between them. Even if this hadn't happened, there was still the incident where Zhangsun had forced Shen Qiao to destroy his martial arts, then been left grievously injured by Shen Qiao's counterattack. The hatred between them had long been planted. Things were peaceful for now, but there was no guarantee it would continue forever. Though Shen Qiao was currently injured, he was no longer the same man he'd been before. As long as he didn't have to deal with Sun Jingxing or Yuan Shushu, be able to handle any attacker while protecting Yuwen Song. So, when they arrived in He province, he slowed their pace, choosing not to take the shortest route to Bixia sect. Instead, he headed south, not only so he himself could recuperate, but also to give Yuwen Song a diversion. This journey continued for over 3 months. The two of them traveled and rested, rested and traveled. Whenever they entered a city, they'd seek out a Taoist monastery to recuperate in. Then Shen Qiao would take Yuwen Song to broaden his horizons, either by enjoying the local scenery or wandering through the streets and alleys, observing the town and various happenings. The vicissitudes of life each hold their own meaning. Within the happenings of this world also lie many truths. From the great Tao springs forth many thousands of paths, but even if there are millions of variations, they never stray from their source. The more Shen Qiao saw, the clearer his heart became, and thus benefited his sword and martial path as well. His current self was long changed from the betrayed, downtrodden sect leader on Xuandu Mountain, but even after being mired in the dust of the secular world, not only did he lack even a hint of crass materialism, he actually he actually seemed more transcendent than ever. Dark hair and blue robes, a long sword on his back, his complexion lustrous, bright like a shining moon. He looked like an immortal among humans, subtly giving off a sense of unapproachability, loftiness, and unapproachable, lofty abstinence. As for Yuwen Song, he was able to mitigate most of his sorrow and melancholy through these sights and sounds. For one so young, if his heart were immersed in gloom for long periods of time, it would shorten his life. Shen Qiao had given this matter much thought and accordingly spoke little of theories or philosophies. Instead, he simply took the boy out to wander around, wanting him to see and consider more of the world. This way, he could open his mind and broaden his horizons. I must let this Taoist master know. The two of you came at the perfect time. Today is Master Huang's banquet to celebrate his 60th birthday. All the city officials and famous gentry have come to offer their congratulations. If you're planning to climb the mountain to sightsee, why not wait until tomorrow to do it? It would be a shame to miss the birthday banquet. After they arrived at Runan's border, Shen Qiao had brought Yuwen Song to an inn. The concierge, having noticed that they weren't locals, gave them this recommendation. Master Huang. Naturally, Shen Qiao was unable to discern the man's identity just from this title alone. Yes, Master Huang's real name is Shi Dao. He's an illustrious scholar of this city. Seems that he's well known among both the Jianghu and the scholar class. My young self cannot claim to know much, but Master Huang's reputation within this city is indeed thunderous. His esteemed self is extremely hospitable. Anyone can stop by for a drink, no invitation required. I heard that the renowned lute player Master Du will be playing a piece in his honor at the banquet, and that many people are going to hear him play. Yeah, birthday banquets are always interesting, I agree. Always a fight to be found. Even if they can't get inside, just listening outside is enough to cleanse the ears. The concierge prattled on and on. Shen Qiao recalled that name, Huan Shi Dao. Yan Wuxi had mentioned him before. The man was from a noble family in Runan, and he was both a master of music and accomplished in martial arts. But due to his family background, he couldn't count as a full member of the Jianghu. Yan Wuxi had no time for martial artists who were the slightest bit lacking. He brought up Huan Shi Dao solely because the man could not only infuse his music with bitter desolation, but also perform sounds so beautiful that birds would flock by the hundreds to listen. He shared some similarities with Fajing sect leader Guang Lingsan, but though Huang Shidao couldn't compare to Guang Lingsan martially, he might surpass him when it came to music. And so Yan Wuxi had briefly mentioned Huang Shidao while talking about Guang Lingsan. Yuwen Song's eyes shone, and he tugged on the corner of Shen Qiao's robe. When Shen Qiao bent down, he whispered, I've seen the lute player he mentioned. His name is Du Yun. He entered the palace to perform before, and it's true. He's so skilled that any piece he plays seemed to linger for 3 days. Do you wish to go listen? Asked Shen Qiao. Yuwen Song bore a yearning expression. Can we? Shen Qiao gave a small smile. Of course we can. Since Master Huang is hospitable, I'm sure he wouldn't mind having the two of us as additional and invited guests. This inn wasn't far from the Huang residence. When they arrived, a man dressed in a steward's uniform was standing before the gates, personally welcoming the guests inside. When he saw Shen Qiao and Yuwen Song approach, he dutifully asked for their names. To avoid trouble, Shen Qiao used an alias. This one is Shen Qiaozi, a wandering Taoist. I heard that it was Master Huang's birthday, so I specially came to congratulate him. It'd be too rude to come empty-handed, so he'd purchased a small gift on the way, which Yuwen Song now presented with both hands. The steward thought little of this small gift. Many people arriving at the Huang residence today were here for free food and drinks, but the Huang residence was large and well off, so a couple extra freeloaders wasn't an issue for them. However, they did separate the banquet goers based on status, grouping them and assigning them to different areas. There were seats for those from the Jianghu, as well as seats for scholars. Huang's residence's steward had seen all sorts of people and had thus long developed a keen eye. When he saw the long weapon-shaped cloth bundle slung over Shen Qiao's back, he grew more cautious. May I ask if this Taoist master is from the Jianghu? Yet Shen Qiao shook his head. I only know a little martial arts. I can't be considered a man from the Jianghu. Seeing how extraordinary his demeanor was, the steward dared not classify him as an ordinary person. He also noticed that while Yuwen Song was young, he was similarly elegant and collected. Hence, he immediately had someone take them to where the scholars were seated. Shen Qiao wasn't acquainted with the people at the banquet, but he was gentle and good-natured as well as amicable to everyone. When the others saw his Taoist dress, they couldn't resist asking him about Taoist matters. After answering a couple of their questions, Shen Qiao was already friendly with the people around him. He also knew that they were all illustrious scholars from the city, with some reputation among the scholar class. They too had come for Master Du's performance. Their esteem was evident in their word. The guests had yet to finish arriving, and the host was greeting them elsewhere. The atmosphere was fervent, but a little noisy, as the crowd quietly chatted among themselves, and Yuwen Song listened intently to the discussion of music around him. Shen Qiao involuntarily raised his head and caught a familiar silhouette out of the corner of his eye. So familiar, in fact, that he couldn't resist making a noise of surprise. And that's where we end. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It'd be funny. Okay. Pen. Where's my pen? Okay. 87 is at 33:30. Ginger lemon tea is the best. Yan Wuxi never met a party he wouldn't crash, right? Seeing Yan Wuxi again. The person Shen Qiao saw was not just anyone, but the Fajing sect leader, Guang Lingsan. Oh. We're not seeing him right off the bat. That's different. In the past, Ryue sect had split into three, and Fajing sect moved their operations to the distant lands of Tuyuhun. I am so glad I could remember how to say that. Pardon me. But as the current world was in turmoil, Guangling San had interfered with the Jianghu of the Central Plains several times, even participating in the ambush on Yan Wuxi in order to secure a share of the spoils. That day, the moment the news of Yan Wushi's death began to spread, Fa Jing's sect authority immediately began to expand eastward. They quickly replaced the influence Huan Yue sect held in Shou near the borders of Tuyuhun, solidifying their own power at the same time. Speaking truthfully, Shen Qiao didn't have too many dealings with this Fa Jing sect leader, but as he was a fairly special man, being the head of a sect, it was hard not to notice him. However, as Guang Lingsan rarely made any public appearances in the Jianghu, few people around him recognized who he was. The man simply drifted past the crowd beneath the colonnades, dressed in his wide-sleeved robes, just like an utterly ordinary guest taking a stroll. Shen Qiao instructed Yuwen Song to sit still and not move, then rose from his seat, walking in the direction where Guang Lingsan had vanished. Though Though Shen Qiao looked like he was idly strolling, he was actually crossing vast distances as if they were mere inches, like he was tramping on clouds, elegant and otherworldly, leaving behind nary a trace. The Huang residence maid passed by him, had the feeling someone was there, but by the time she turned her head, Shen Qiao had completely left her field of vision. Only someone who had trained a rainbow stretches across the heavens to transcend perfection could manifest Xuandu Mountain's Qinggong to such an amazing level. Oh yeah, time out. So this I have to show off a little bit because this was also the personal gift that my sister and her family made me. So they each got me a different charm as well as the little love over here. So my brother-in-law got me a skull. My nephew got me a tree. My sister got me a heart, and my niece got me a paw print for my puppy. So yeah, I have to show that off because you'll probably hear it clinking. But yeah. Right? I thought it was super sweet. Right. I have to show it off because it's really cute and I like it. Okay. Though Guang Lingsan also looked like he was on a carefree stroll, he too was walking at a very swift pace. Shen Qiao turned a corner and arrived at a fork that split into three. One led towards the main courtyard, another to a scenic cobblestone path that was part of the garden, and the last to a pond in the backyard. The Huang residence covered a good deal of land in Runan, and the area ahead was surrounded by rockwork, which blocked the view. Guang Lingsan had already disappeared from sight, making it hard to determine which path he'd taken right away. Shen Qiao stood in place and pondered for a moment. Then he gave up on taking the middle path, which held the highest chance of finding Guang Lingsan, and instead picked the last one. The Huangs were a powerful local family. This garden was attached to a building next door, originally where the host would serve guests. Normally, people were free to go anywhere they wished, but as the host might still have live-in guests to serve, most people wouldn't charge into the backyard. As Shen Qiao walked towards the pond, keeping his footsteps and breathing as quiet as possible, he suddenly heard the faint murmurs of conversation from afar. One of the voices caused his heart to sink heavily, as if he'd received a harsh blow. Even his breathing became harried and disordered for a moment. It was only for a moment. An average martial artist wouldn't have detected any such subtle changes, but that didn't hold for experts who'd climbed past a certain level. Upon entering any environment, they'd be able to sense the movement of qi within their surroundings, to the point that they could even affect it by mobilizing their own true qi. The slightest disturbance was enough for them to immediately realize that something was off. A leaf shot toward Shen Qiao, its caster unknown. It sliced through the air with incredible speed, but without a sound. Any martial artist who was even a little mediocre wouldn't have been able to react before it reached them. But fortunately, it seemed like the attacker hadn't wanted to kill anyone while at the Huang residence. It only swept past Shen Qiao's hair, obviously meant as a warning. If the target had been a manor servant or even an average practitioner, they'd involuntarily gasp in shock and dodge backward. Or perhaps they'd rush to flee, knowing that their skills were inferior. In any case, they'd definitely make some noise. Guangling San had assessed that this was but a trifling Huang family birthday banquet. Thus, the practitioners who'd arrived were also mediocre, without any standout characters. However, not even the slightest whisper followed this leaf of his, as if it were a stone slinking silently into the ocean. That was strange. He couldn't help but jolt, wondering if there was someone incredible here after all. Crouching tiger or hidden dragon. To think that a Grandmaster-level expert unknown to him would appear here. Which venerable gentleman has graced this place, who somehow doesn't know to hear no evil, see no evil? It's rude to eavesdrop. Ooh, we got a picture. We got a picture. We're a little ahead of ourselves with the picture, because I think it's for what's about to happen, but there you go. I think that's in screen. It's kind of the first time we see Yan Wuxi like looking serious. Guangling San's voice was bright and clear as he slowly stepped out. Now that the rockery was no longer blocking his line of sight, the man behind it also came into view. He'd barely finished speaking when a look of surprise crossed his face. Although it lasted only an instant, it was enough. So, it was Taoist Master Shen. They'd parted on unpleasant terms last time, but now that they'd met each other again, Guangling San wore a smile as before, as if it had never happened. Yet Shen Qiao's attention wasn't on him, but on the man next to him, where the person standing next to Guangling San was none other than Yan Wuxi. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his temples peppered with white. His countenance shone like jade, and there was a faint smile at the corner of his lips, his imperiousness apparent. Just like when they'd first met. I don't see a smile. He looks very serious to me. Maybe it's a Lamonji smile. Even at Yan Wuxi's most downtrodden, Shen Qiao had never seen even the slightest hint of mental collapse from him. His self-confidence and conceit were obvious, and he'd always been this way. Since Yan Wuxi had lured away Sun Jingxing when they'd parted at the broken-down temple, and Shen Qiao had headed to Chang'an alone, over 4 months had passed, and much had happened. 4 months was neither particularly long nor particularly short. For a martial artist, the single day-night cycle could be enough for a breakthrough. However, if they couldn't make any progress, then even years and decades would be nothing to them. Yan Wuxi had always been a martial arts genius. Having obtained 3 volumes of the Shuyang strategy, including the one related to the demonic discipline, he told Shen Qiao before that he already knew how to repair the flaw in his demonic core. It wasn't inconceivable for him to show up 4 months later as healthy and whole as he'd been in the beginning. But a question remained. That night, his martial arts had yet to recover, so how exactly had he managed to escape danger at Sun Jingxing's hands? And Guangling San was one of the 5 martial experts who'd ambushed him. He'd even played a crucial role. One could say that he'd been directly responsible for aggravating Yan Wuxi's flaw and was the ringleader who'd ultimately caused his defeat. So why was Yan Wuxi with him? Furthermore, the two of them seemed to be chatting. They were smiling, painting a rather harmonious picture, even. It didn't seem at all like they could draw their swords on each other with one wrong word. Shen Qiao's heart was heavy with doubts. For a moment, he wasn't sure which he should do first. Ask Yan Wuxi if he'd fully recovered, or deal with Guangling San. Seeing his reaction, Guangling San smiled. Looks like Taoist Master Shen is confused that I've shown up here at this time. Shen Qiao pulled himself together. The moment Yan Wuxi had appeared, his mind had all but fallen into chaos, shaking his Taoist core. So he took this moment in the conversation to settle his emotions, then said, "The Huang family's banquet is open to everyone, so it's natural that sect leader Guang has come as well. This humble Taoist isn't the host. Of course, he has no right to intervene. But he wishes to know why sect leader Yan is also here." Guangling San looked at Yan Wuxi, then said with a smile, "Shouldn't you give Taoist Master Shen an explanation, sect leader Yan?" However, Yan Wuxi gave a slight sneer. "Who is this? Is he someone my venerable self must know?" It was as if a basin of frigid water had been thrown over his head. Shen Qiao's heart instantly became ice cold. He scrutinized Yan Wuxi carefully. Not only was his lack of recognition plain on Yan Wuxi's face, there wasn't a hint of familiarity hidden in the depths of his gaze. Shen Qiao didn't even see the sense of closeness expected of a reunion between old friends, let alone the joy of seeing someone after a long separation. The man who'd smiled inside at the broken-down temple, calling him foolish Ah Qiao, still seemed to stand before his eyes, and those words still seemed to linger in his ears. Ever since they'd met at Bamboo Peak, it was as though their fates were tightly bound by an invisible string. If one said that Yan Wuxi had saved Shen Qiao's life in the beginning, then afterward Shen Qiao too had risked his life to protect Yan Wuxi several times. He pulled him back from the brink of death, yet Yan Wuxi only considered him a tool, treating Shen Qiao without the slightest hint of sentimentality. He'd even pushed him into the flames himself, nearly causing Shen Qiao to suffer a calamity of calamities. On careful analysis, Yan Wuxi was the one who owed Shen Qiao more, but matters of the heart couldn't be treated like transactions. They couldn't be weighed and calculated so clearly. After repeated entanglements, past kindnesses and grudges had all blurred together, impossible to delineate. That is, up until that moment in the broken-down temple, where Yan Wuxi had placed him within the Buddha statue and drawn Jingxing away by himself. Then, everything seemed to change. But right now, the man he'd been unable to find had suddenly appeared before him, and he was even fraternizing with an enemy. Exactly what had happened since then? It shouldn't have been like this. It shouldn't have been like this. These words sounded several times in Shen Qiao's heart, and he suddenly recalled when the other man had first awoken after his grave injuries and entered qi deviation. He felt even more certain in his judgment. Yan Wuxi had probably yet to fully recover, and his personality had changed drastically again, causing him to lose his memories. Guangling San had taken this chance to get close to him, and he must have said something to make Yan Wuxi trust him. But even when met with such an unprecedented incident, Shen Qiao was able to quickly calm himself, then began pondering the most appropriate strategy of response. Sect leader Yan's memory is quite terrible, he said. To think, he's even forgotten his own savior. Savior? Yan Wuxi's tone was full of mockery. My venerable self would like to see what you're made of, that you dare proclaim yourself my savior. As he spoke, his figure flitted forward, and he clawed at Shen Qiao with lightning speed. Martial artists' every movement, every word, would all reflect their prowess. Yan Wuxi didn't underestimate Shen Qiao. He put around 6 to 7/10 of his full strength into the palm strike. Even if his opponent's skills were comparable to his own, he'd still be forced to draw his sword and meet him accordingly. But Shen Qiao was already prepared. He was unwilling to fight Yan Wuxi in front of Guangling San, much less fight him at someone else's house. He instantly flew back several yards, then floated back around the rockery. His figure flitted about, feather light and lovely, as if he were a piece of drifting duckweed. Seeing such a display of qigong, not only was Yan Wuxi a bit surprised, even Guangling San couldn't help but shout in praise. Very few in the world can match Taoist Master Shen's qigong, I believe. A rainbow stretches across the heaven. truly outstanding. Xuandu Mountain has indeed earned its reputation. Fraction counter? Do you mean injustices to service workers or what? Oh, yeah. No, the fraction counter. Okay, I get it. I figured it out as soon as I said something. Okay. There we go. That's good. Okay. Now we have to figure, is that 7/8 or how much? 6 to 7/10 of his full strength into his palm strike. So are we thinking that's his damaged 6 to 7/10 strength, or are we thinking that's like he's back to full strength and this is what's happening? I don't know. Probably. He probably was pulling the strike. Xuandu Mountain has indeed earned its reputation. Sect leader Guang is too kind. Shen Qiao's expression was cool. This is the Huang residence, and this humble Taoist is only here as a guest. It wouldn't be right to stir up trouble at someone else's birthday celebration. If sect leader Yan wishes to fight, please set aside another time and place. This Taoist would be pleased to keep you company then. Yeah, it's not cool to leave a dead body for the host to clean up. That's true, said Guangling San with a smile. Though there's no one here, it'd be far too unsightly to disturb the hosting family. Wuxi, since Taoist Master Shen wishes to reminisce with you, why not set a new time? Wuxi? Oh, he's getting personal. Calling him Wuxi. Shen Qiao's eyes twitched. Yet Wuxi sneered. My venerable self doesn't even know him. Why should I meet with him to reminisce? If everyone used this excuse to come knocking, does that mean I'd have to keep each and every one of them company? Well, his Qinggong is decent enough. His internal energy is completely average, supported only by a couple of sword techniques. He'd lose to me within 100 blows. Why should my venerable self give this kind of opponent a second glance when a single one is enough to see through him completely? These words truly elicited a sense of deja vu. Shen Qiao recalled what he'd said that day. My venerable self doesn't need friends. Only one kind of person is qualified to stand as my equal, an opponent. Shen Qiao realized that now, no matter how awful of a situation he'd found himself in, he too had learned the art of self-depreciation and mockery. If you don't fight me, how can you know that I'm beneath you? He asked Yan Wuxi. His desire to provoke Yan Wuxi into a duel was all for the purpose of finding a chance to be alone with him, to warn him that Guangling San was a foe, not a friend. Unfortunately, Yan Wuxi couldn't be bothered to spare him another glance. He said to Guangling San, I was already growing impatient with staying here. You're the one who insisted on coming to listen to music. Guangling San was all smiles. He didn't refute him. Yes, it's my fault. Go listen by yourself, said Yan Wuxi. Come find me after you're done. You know where I'll be. All right, said Guangling San. Then you can leave first. I won't see you off. The two of them seemed familiar with each other, yet also like strangers. Shen Qiao, wholly unable to intervene, could only watch from the side, completely superfluous. I'm actually going to go refill my tea real quick. It'll be like 2-3 minutes. I need more hot tea. I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you, friends, for your patience. I kept just a little water in the kettle so it'd be quick. Okay. Right. Okay. So we are starting at 1 hour. Exactly. Chapter 88, Teaching a Disciple. Du Yun's music was indeed extraordinary. The notes of his lute reverberated within the Huang residence, and in an instant, even the birds flying overhead seemed to stop and listen. Tea is definitely a food group, I agree, Truffle. The lively Huang residence suddenly quieted down as all noise of conversation vanished. Only the scant notes of the lute remained, drifting about the rafters. Yuwen Song had grown up living a luxurious life, which had left its mark. Combined with his outstanding gifts, his appreciation for music went far beyond that of others his age. At this time, he was fully immersed in the music with his entire being, all the way until the performance finished, and Shen Qiao sat down by his side. Only then did he return to himself. "You're back?" Yuwen Song noticed that Shen Qiao's expression was a bit off, and he couldn't help but ask. "What's wrong? Did your esteemed self see something?" Shen Qiao frowned slightly. "I met an old acquaintance, but it seems that he's completely forgotten me." "A friend?" asked Yuwen Song. Shen Qiao smiled. "Rather than a friend, he's more like a foe." "Did your esteemed self fight him?" "No," said Shen Qiao. "He's insolent and arrogant by nature, and he usually does as he wishes. He can switch between good and evil without a second thought. At first, he saved me, but then he threw me into the hands of an enemy." "Ah," said Yuwen Song. "Then have you sought revenge on him yet?" Shen Qiao shook his head. "Afterward, out of happenstance, he and I again spent some time in each other's company. Once he ran into a common enemy, and he sealed my acupoints before hiding me in a safe place, then went to meet the danger himself, luring away the enemy who presented the greatest threat to us." Yuwen Song was perplexed. "He doesn't sound too evil, then. So why would he ignore you now?" He was still young, after all. Regardless of how mature his speech was, there was a limit to his experiences, and so his words carried a slight hint of childishness. Shen Qiao thought this amusing and patted his head. "I don't know either. Perhaps some things are better left unknown." After these last couple of exchanges, a good amount of his confusion and disappointment had faded as well. "Caprice, thy name is Yen Wuxi." "Yeah." Yuwen Song took the initiative to ask, "Shall we leave, Taoist Master?" Originally, Shen Qiao had thought that since the Huang residence was a prosperous household and the image of luxury, Yuwen Song would have been feeling nostalgic for this kind of environment, being from the royal family himself. He didn't expect the child had truly only come for the music, without any other thoughts. "The banquet has already begun, and we've presented our gift, so no one can say we came empty-handed," Shen Qiao said. "The delicacies and wine here might not compare to what's in the palace, but it should be many times better than what's at the inn. Don't you want to eat before leaving?" Yuwen Song shook his head. "There are too many guests here. An oversensitive person might grow suspicious. I was already indulging myself by coming here to listen. You've indulged me so much, and I can't keep recklessly taking advantage of it." What a good kid. Like, truly, what a good kid. As he said this, he once again seemed to stop being an ordinary child. Shen Qiao knew that the deaths of the entire Qi residents had been a heavy blow on him. Ever since they left the capital, Yuwen Song had remained vigilant and wary, his every word and action exceedingly careful. He avoided talking to strangers as much as possible. Coming to listen to this performance could already be considered one of his most excessive requests for the entire journey. Yeah, the royal kids are really adorable. Like, they're winning. Well, they're not winning in life. They're winning in personality and standards. Shen Qiao recalled the chance encounter just now. Guangling San probably hadn't shown up just for Shen Qiao, but he knew that Shen Qiao was here now. If he wished to investigate further, it'd be easy for him to discover Yuwen Song. Guangling San ranked as one of the world's top 10 martial artists. His martial prowess itself wasn't particularly outstanding among the top 10. Rather, it was his identity as the leader of Fa Jiang's sect that earned him a seat. But Shen Qiao knew that he absolutely couldn't underestimate any member of the demonic sect. Demonic practitioners were demonic practitioners precisely because they never showed their full selves to outsiders. They'd use layer upon layer of crafty tactics, unpredictable and inscrutable. Regardless of one's martial skills, it was easy to fall into their trap the moment one became careless. Though Yuwen Song was of little use to Guangling San, who knew if the man would do something as a passing caprice. On top of that, there was Yan Wuxi. Hey, there you go, caprice! Shen Qiao nodded. Very well. Let us go then. It's still early. We should be able to order something when we get back to the inn. They'd come to this birthday banquet, but they'd failed to manage a meal and had only gotten to hear music. It was simply too strange in the eyes of others. The concierge was shocked at their swift return. However, Shen Qiao had no intention of explaining any details to him. The two ordered some food to eat in their room, 3 side dishes and 1 soup. Compared to what Yuwen Song had once eaten, it really was too humble. The taste naturally couldn't compare to the dishes of the royal chefs. But Yuwen Song understood very well the situation he was in. He hadn't so much as uttered half a complaint the entire journey. Seeing this, Shen Qiao was of course even more pleased and even began to contemplate accepting him as a disciple. Thinking of how Yuwen Song had just suffered through a huge change and how his emotions were probably still immersed in the grief of losing his loved ones, Shen Qiao was in no hurry to propose this to him. He was prepared to wait until Yuwen Song completely emerged from the shadows within his heart. Is there something on your mind, Taoist Master Shen? Yuwen Song suddenly asked. Shen Qiao said nothing about accepting disciples. It's nothing, he said instead. I was only thinking about the old acquaintance I met this afternoon. Is he important to you? Asked Yuwen Song. Why do you ask? If he isn't, why do you keep thinking of him? Shen Qiao gave a light cough. I'm not always thinking of him. Oh, that's ink. Shen Qiao, Yuwen Song didn't say anything, but the words, you clearly are, were written all over his face. Shen Qiao suddenly felt like bringing up this topic had been most unwise. Even if he tried to argue and lay out his reasoning, it would be pointless. He was about to change the subject when Yuwen Song spoke in a consoling tone. In truth, I think that this acquaintance of yours also considers you important. Shen Qiao was caught between laughing and crying. He really wanted to say, let's not talk about this any further. But it was rare for Yuwen Song to earnestly discuss something with him, so he didn't want to smother his mood. He played along and asked, why do you think so? My 6th elder brother, Liu Xiang, and I were close in age, said Yuwen Song. We did everything together, whether it was studying, eating, or sleeping. But since he was older, he would always mess with me. Once he even told me that there was a tree with phoenix eggs and tricked me into climbing it. I couldn't get down, and he stood beneath it and laughed at me. Shen Qiao thought this amusing. How old were you then? With how bright you are, I can't imagine you getting tricked. Yeah, baby calling Shen Qiao out is hilarious. It really is. He's like, okay. Sure, you're not thinking of him. Yuwen Song's fair and tender face turned a soft red. It was unclear if it was due to vexation or embarrassment. I wouldn't have fallen for a normal trick, of course. But to make sure I believed him, he had someone create a splendid model phoenix. Then in the middle of the night, he made it fly past my room several times and land on the tree. He told me that a phoenix had come to our house to lay eggs. If it'd been only once or twice, I wouldn't have cared, but after it happened so many times, how could I not be fooled? If it was you, Taoist Master Shen, surely you'd want to investigate too, wouldn't you? Well, sorry. That was gross. Ugh. I hope none of you get sick anytime soon, friends. Shen Qiao held back his laughter. Yes, of course. Afterward, I tattled on him to father. But father said Liu Xiang acted like that because he loved me, and that those he didn't like wouldn't even get a second glance. I think perhaps your old acquaintance is the same, isn't he? Little bit, yes. A little bit, yes. But also, he's kind of just a dick. Like, let's be real. Teasing is definitely part of his love language, but like, there's a lot to work through first. Yeah, it's not fun right now. And I even got the flu shot. So, definitely wearing a mask is not a bad idea. I might reorder some before I go back to work. And you said he placed himself in. Shen Qiao gave a wry smile. Coming from Yuwen Song, the unpredictable and inscrutable nature of human hearts became little more than a child's playtime. And you said he placed himself in danger for your sake, Yuwen Song added. That proves that he cares about you even more, just like Liu Xiang and me. Though he often bullied me, that day he said to mother that I was youngest, and so I had to leave first in order to preserve the Yuan bloodline. If it had been Shiwu instead, he would have definitely teared up at this point. But Yuwen Song's voice only grew a little heavier as his expression strained and a solemn cast fell over his face. Yan Wuxi picks on everyone, though, so it's a bit hard to tell. That's fair. Hello, Esper Lady. Welcome. Happy New Year. I hope it's a good one so far. I'm starting off not with a bang, but a sneeze, so I apologize for the quality of the video today. It's not going to be the best, but I'm here and we're enjoying it and we're together, so that's what's important. Thank you, Esper Lady. Basically, what's happened so far, Shen Qiao and Yuwen Song are traveling for a couple months away from the Jianghu. Basically decided, hey, we'll head to Bixia sect. But on the way, they heard about this really renowned musician playing at the manor for free. So they took a stop there, ran into Yuen's Guang Ling Song. So the dude who was the demonic cultivator, one of the 5 that was attacking Yan Wuxi, talking with Yan Wuxi. And apparently Yan Wuxi has amnesia again and doesn't remember Shen Qiao. Apparently. But yeah. Oh, ear infections are horrible. Sorry that happened last year. I'm glad you're feeling better this year. But that is basically where we are. But yeah. So, right now, he said quietly, right now, I wish so much that I could return to the past. It'd be fine if he messes with me every day. I only wish this was a dream, that the moment I wake up, they'll all return to life. Poor baby. Shen Qiao was silent for a moment. He knew that Yuwen Song's mental maturity was far beyond the average child, so the normal words of comfort would do little for him. I'm glad, Truffle. Do you know what the 3 talents are? He asked. Heaven, earth, and man, said Yuwen Song. The Tao of heaven, yin and yang. The Tao of earth, strength and gentleness. Do you know what comes after? Yuwen Song nodded. The Tao of man, benevolence and righteousness. Correct, said Shen Qiao. I didn't want to bring up the past at first in case it would arouse your grief, but since I've already mentioned it, I might as well prattle on a bit. Taoists cultivate tranquility, but they also value karma and reciprocation. It's not unique to only Buddhism. Yuwen Yun's perverse actions caused your entire family to suffer unjust deaths. If you wish to seek revenge, not only will I not persuade you against it, I will also teach you martial arts. However, I do not wish for this to consume your heart. Humans are humans because they possess wisdom. That's what differentiates them from beasts. No matter how good-natured a tiger or lion might be, the moment they're hungry, they must eat, and so they must kill. But when a human grows hungry, they can endure that hunger, and they know how to use various methods to keep themselves clothed and fed. This is the basis on which man can rank among the three talents. Do you understand? Yuwen Song truly possessed comprehension beyond the ordinary. After a moment of silence, he added, and he nodded. I understand. The Taoist master hopes that I can throw away the burdens of the past to become someone great and indomitable. No matter how much I hate Yuwen Yang, I can't become like him. Shen Qiao was pleased. Exactly. You truly are incredible, as expected of the most promising son of the Yuwen family. Oh my goodness, I'm going to go through this whole box, I swear. Shen Qiao is pleased. Exactly. You truly are incredible, as expected of the most promising son of the Yuwen family. A rare bashfulness surfaced on Yuwen Song's face. Then, may I learn martial arts from you? Shen Qiao laughed. Of course you can. My sect accepts disciples based on two things. First, their moral character, and second, their aptitude. Even if their aptitude doesn't stand out, being honest and upright is enough. Furthermore, your aptitude is exceptional and your physical qualities excellent. Perfect for practicing martial arts. Yuwen Song was delighted. He rose to his feet, wanting to acknowledge Shen Qiao as his master, but Shen Qiao stopped him. No need to rush, he said. We can hold an official ceremony once I bring you back to Bixia sect. It won't be too late then, and it'll have more gravitas as well. Of course, Yuwen Song had no objections. This one conversation with Shen Qiao had resolved many of the troubles plaguing his heart. That night, he slept soundly, sinking into dreams the moment his head hit the pillow. Instead, it was Shen Qiao who couldn't stop his fluctuating emotions when he recalled those words. Even after meditating for a long time, he failed to completely enter the state of being one with the world. By now, the wee hours of the night had already arrived. The bustling clamor of daytime had completely vanished, and the only sound was the ringing of the watchman's gong from beyond the window. Now that he could neither sleep nor meditate, he didn't open his eyes either, but instead kept them closed, calming his mind and opening his senses. He keenly felt as if his entire surroundings were melding into each breath he took. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and rose, drifting towards the window. He moved swiftly, with nary a whisper. Even if Yuwen Song had been lying awake instead of fast asleep, he wouldn't have realized that the man beside him was already gone without personally seeing him leave. At this time, the windows were half open. Leaving through them would be quite difficult. Were only half open. But Shen Qiao was like a ghost. One instant, he was stretching his torso outside the window, and the next, his figure was already sliding along the inn's outer walls as he flitted onto the rooftop. Sure enough, on the roof, right above and across from their room, stood a man. He was dressed entirely in black and wore a veiled hat concealing his face from view. I have a feeling this is slightly after the view is not concealed. There's the Yan Wuxi we know. He's got his smirk back. His snirk. Right? Magic. They're both so pretty because of magic. All right. Chapter 89. Listening in to a late night show. If this distinguished master is only stopping by, said Shen Qiao, I must ask you to go somewhere else. Though the other party didn't reveal his face, his figure appeared somewhat familiar. However, Shen Qiao couldn't be certain whether he really was that person. He once heard Yan Wuxi mention certain rules of the Jianghu. When traveling outside, robbers would inevitably appear at night. They'd hide on inn rooftops and target guests, waiting for a chance to strike. Perhaps to steal money, or perhaps for another reason altogether. At this point, guests from sects ought to declare which one they were from. If the thief saw that his target was a powerful martial artist or came from a prestigious background, they'd usually be too afraid to attack. Shen Qiao had already displayed his qinggong. Anyone with eyes should be able to see that he was a fearsome martial artist and have second thoughts about offending him. But the other party didn't speak, didn't even wait for Shen Qiao to finish before he suddenly struck. His movements were profoundly gentle, as if he were only plucking flowers or willow branches, but it wasn't the spring water fingers technique that Shen Qiao expected. The blast from that palm was light and airy, yet halfway through it suddenly transformed, now bone-chillingly severe as it swept towards his face. With a furl of his sleeve, Shen Qiao negated that palm strike, but the other man suddenly flashed forward, reappearing before him. His right hand stuck to a key acupoint on Shen Qiao's wrist, and the left made a grab for Shen Qiao's neck. Shen Qiao didn't retreat, but advanced instead. His sleeves flapped outward like waves crashing upon the shore, and he sent a heavy strike at his opponent's left hand. Meanwhile, his own left hand nimbly turned itself over, striking out of the other's grasping range, then grabbed for the man instead. Yan Wuxi? He ventured, if only because those hands looked somewhat familiar. Martial arts, however, were completely different. The man in black still didn't answer. Instead, he made another soundless strike, but it didn't seem like he wanted to kill Shen Qiao. Rather than fighting, it was more like the two of them were sparring. Even if it was only a spar, every move was expertly executed and profound. The current Shen Qiao was already extensively experienced. At least he possessed an understanding of the martial arts from the various sects. For martial artists of his level, if he'd seen moves that were similar in style, he'd recall them completely. But this black-clad man's movements were an utter mystery. One move would seem like it came from Qingchang Mountain Chunyang Monastery, but then his next would appear in the style of the demonic sect. Shen Qiao found himself at a loss. Some powerful martial artists might not care for battle, but any who were willing to chase after goals on the martial path would possess a love for the arts themselves. No matter how uncooperative or indifferent to reputation Shen Qiao was, he couldn't resist the thrill of excitement upon seeing an unknown yet equally matched opponent, and he was itching to duel him. All these boys, they just want to fight. Having gained so much experience while in the Jianghu, he no longer dropped his guard so easily. He was also wary that the opponent might be trying to draw him away from the inn to target Yuwen Song while he slept in the room. Once someone attained a certain level of martial prowess, they could determine a person's location just by the sound of their breathing, and Shen Qiao possessed this ability. Though he was currently fighting this man, he kept a sliver of his attention on Yuwen Song, and he could tell that the boy was still sleeping as soundly as before, completely unaware of the fight taking place on the roof. Yes, you did. Real quick, here's the picture. There you go, Truffle. You're welcome. They'd exchanged several blows, but neither side had used their full strength. His opponent's goal was unclear, and his moves only grew more varied, innovative, and unpredictable. Shen Qiao took this opportunity for an opening to grab at his hat, and his fingers caught the black veil, thus exposing the man's face. It really was Yan Wuxi. No worries, Truffle. I'm sorry your computer was freaking out. Sect leader Yan, Shen Qiao frowned. What are you doing here? Ah, Qiao, you're so callous, said Yan Wuxi. I almost died against Sun Jingsing for you, and yet the first thing you say is a frosty sect leader Yan. His voice was teasing and full of laughter. There was no trace of the estrangement he'd demonstrated earlier in the day. You remember everything? With their meeting earlier that day, Shen Qiao had already mentally prepared himself for Yan Wuxi losing all his memories. To think that the man would be exactly the same as before upon opening his mouth. Calling other people callous will never not be funny. Yeah, right? He couldn't help but pause in his astonishment, his movements also halting. You shouldn't do that when fighting him. And with this slight pause, Yan Wuxi's finger had already struck his shoulder, and Shen Qiao fell limply into Shen Qiao's outstretched arms. Shh. Smiling, Yan Wuxi made a gesture, telling him to be quiet. No need to worry, I'm just bringing you elsewhere. Before Shen Qiao could react, Yan Wuxi also struck his mute acupoint. His use of the spring water's finger technique was incomparably dexterous. There was no sign that he'd suffered any decline in martial arts. It's dexterous finger move, huh? Lucky Shen Qiao. Ugh, my ear is so itchy today. Right, Annika? Before Shen Qiao could react, no, I already did that. Shen Qiao thought that he'd been quite watchful, yet somehow he'd been tricked anyway. Before he could drive himself to frustration, Yan Wuxi had already picked him up in a bridal carry and leapt off the inn's roof. His figure fell and rose, elegant and strong, his black clothes melding into the night. Carrying a second person didn't slow him down in the slightest. Yuwen Song was still back at the inn. Shen Qiao couldn't speak, but Yan Wuxi seemed to guess his thoughts. The Yuwen family has nothing to worry about now that Yuwen Xian's gone. Yuwen Yun is the only one who wishes to slaughter them all. No one else will care about a single Yuan Qi-lang. It might have been different right after Yuan Xian's death, but to travel thousands of miles and drag him back at this point, it's pointless. Those words implied that Yuwen Song was safe. Upon hearing this, Shen Qiao knew that Yan Wuxi had never lost his memories in the first place, let alone undergone any personality shifts. But he had no idea what had happened in between. Why had he been talking and laughing with Guangling San? Shen Qiao's many doubts hadn't vanished with Yan Wuxi's reappearance. If anything, they'd increased. Yan Wuxi had no intention of explaining, at least not right now. He carried Shen Qiao as he flew from rooftop to rooftop. Before long, the inn was far behind them. Though his body couldn't move, Shen Qiao's vision was still fine. He suddenly realized that Yan Wuxi's destination seemed to be the Huang residence they'd been at earlier in the day. We're going to see a fun show, said Yan Wuxi. However, you're not to move, else I won't bring you out to play again. His voice was light. It sounded more like he was coaxing a child. Regardless of how good-natured Shen Qiao was, he couldn't resist internally rolling his eyes. The Huang household wasn't a poor, humble family. Guards were patrolling, both within the gates and without. However, their martial abilities were naturally insufficient to discover Yan Wuxi, and he might as well have been carrying Shen Qiao through a public square. No different than if he'd been strolling around in his own backyard. Shen Qiao noticed that the place he'd landed seemed to be the back garden where they'd thrown the birthday banquet earlier. Shen Qiao had encountered Guang Lingsan and Yan Wuxi around the rockery. In order to reach this yard, one had to loop around the rockery first, so they should be near the yard's pond. Unlike before, Yan Wuxi didn't stop on the rooftop. Instead, he chose a spot near the pond with dense vegetation, which happened to be in a blind spot around a turn in the walls. The cover provided by the shadows of the colonnades and leaves helped conceal their figures completely, and with their martial prowess, they could easily adjust their breathing. There was little worry of them being discovered. The building near the wall they were pressed against was lit by candlelight. The faint flickering glow poured out through the cracks in the window, accompanied by the scattered sounds of conversation. Shen Qiao had no idea why Yan Wuxi had brought him here to eavesdrop. Even after they'd waited a while, the man appeared to have no intentions of unsealing his acupoints, so he could only prick his ears to listen to the sounds within the room. The conversation was very quiet, but by using his true qi, he could still hear a little. One person was panting harshly, their breaths interspersed with the occasional teasing word. Another person moaned, their voice sweet and fawning. It was true that Shen Qiao had no experience when it came to romance between men and women, but even someone who'd never eaten pork would still know the word pig. Hearing these noises, of course he knew what they were doing. Taoism extolled a life of purity and integrity, but if one wanted to pair cultivate, there were Taoist methods for it. There was no outright ban, making it different from Buddhism, which enforced both abstinence and vegetarianism. However, knowing about it was one thing. Actually listening to people rolling around in bed was another. Perhaps some people would enjoy eavesdropping on the lovemaking of others, but Shen Qiao was a modest and upright gentleman. He was immediately uncomfortable and longed to burst his acupoints open right then and run. Poor buddy. As if he'd noticed Shen Qiao's thoughts, Yan Wuxi sealed 2 more key acupoints on his back, utterly laying waste to Taoist Master Shen's plan. Shen Qiao would have had nothing to say even if he'd been able to speak. Only an immoral man will see immoral things, said Yan Wuxi, using the sound transmission technique, while the pure will remain pure. Don't you know that, Taoist Master Shen? His tone was leisurely, leaving Shen Qiao speechless. At this moment, the couple were in the throes of passion. The woman was completely bare, reclining. All right, you know what's happening. Yun Niang, the man repeated the nickname of the woman below him, his body soaked in sweat from his vigorous motions. Panting ceaselessly, he teased her in a rough voice. Though you're a little older than me, I couldn't have imagined how arresting you are without your clothes. If only I'd known earlier. Since Shen Qiao's acupoints were sealed, rendering him completely immobile, he could only steel himself and continue listening. Yan Wuxi had placed him by the wall, while he himself stood behind him, holding him up, supporting what seemed to be most of Shen Qiao's weight. But even as the lovemaking continued within the building, Yan Wuxi didn't stay still either. The arm holding Shen Qiao slowly began to wander, and he even whispered in Shen Qiao's ear, "Ah, Qiao, I don't see how she's so arresting. She's only average. If anything, you have a waist more slender than hers." I'm sure Shen Qiao so wanted to hear that from you, Yan Wuxi. Spring nights were crisp, but Shen Qiao's internal energy had slowly recovered, and he no longer feared the cold as before, so he only wore a single Taoist robe. Right now, separated only by a thin layer of fabric, and Wuxi's body heat was searing hot. It almost felt like it was pressed right to his skin. Qiao, you're shivering, Yuwen Wuxi said, mouth against his ear. Are you wearing too little? Laughter laced his tone, and he had almost trapped Shen Qiao within his arms. Well, stop shivering if you let go! Shen Qiao raged internally. He didn't know whether it was due to shameful anger or embarrassment, but his face also grew increasingly warm. The conversation within the building continued. What would have happened if you'd known earlier? The woman's voice was a little hoarse, but it only added a touch of charm. If I'd known earlier, I'd have dragged you into bed sooner, the man laughed, gloating. Is your guild leader duo as skilled as I am in bed? The moment he heard the words guild leader duo, Shen Qiao jerked to attention. He paid no further heed to Yuwen Wuxi's provocations and focused all his energies on listening to them talk. Yuwen Wuxi silently lamented this, but his teasing ceased. The woman was displeased. Enough with that nonsense. There's nothing between him and me. If not for the rampart we shared, why would I do this with you? What kind of trash do you take me for? Do you think the lofty deputy leader of the Liu He Guild is so eager to humiliate herself? The Liu He Guild's deputy leader, Yun Fuyi. Shen Qiao had already thought that this woman's voice sounded familiar, but he'd been unable to recall it. It's only when she spoke her own title that he saw the light. Was this not Yun Fuyi, who he'd once met before at Chu Yun Temple? When the man heard the subtle anger within her voice, he quickly smiled apologetically. I misspoke. Don't be angry. My love for you is sincere. After this brief interlude, the building was once again filled with the sounds of passion. Shen Qiao had no mind for embarrassment. He replayed their conversation in his mind. The man's voice sounded fairly young. He definitely wasn't the Master Huang who'd thrown the birthday banquet earlier today. Perhaps he was from the second generation, or even the third. The Huang household was wealthy and could be considered a famous noble family in the area, but by standards of the Jianghu, they were only average, their martial arts mediocre. Why would Yun Fuyi show up here and involve herself with them? Regardless, Yuwen Wuxi couldn't have brought him to this wall to eavesdrop for this long, just so Shen Qiao could witness the passion between a couple in love. But Yuwen Wuxi didn't give him much time to think. Once again, he picked Shen Qiao up by the waist, then took him around the garden. They passed through the rockery and arrived at the cookhouse within the yard. Naturally, as it was the middle of the night, it was silent. There was neither smoke nor the aroma of food. In fact, other than the couple from earlier who'd snuck into the garden for their affair, the members of the Huang household mostly stayed in a neighboring manor, which had its own kitchen. The master of the house and his female servants also had their own cooking areas, while the food served at the banquet earlier had been ordered from inns. This kitchen was mostly for decoration, and few people visited. And Wuxi put Shen Qiao down and unsealed his acupoints, restoring his freedom. Of course, Shen Qiao didn't start yelling, nor did he make a run for it. By now, he'd realized that Yuwen Wuxi must have brought him here for something important. He followed him as he pushed open the door of the cookhouse and entered. Did you realize anything? Yuwen Wuxi suddenly asked without looking back. Shen Qiao thought for a moment, then said, Everything here is neatly put away. Seems like it's rarely used. And Wuxi shook his head. If it's been a while since it was last used, with the windows shut so tightly, there should be at least some dust. But there isn't even a speck of it. Don't you find that strange? Shen Qiao realized he was right. That's true. So that means people must come here often? Correct, said Yuwen Wuxi. He approached the stove and effortlessly lifted the iron pan. There was no wood-burning stovetop beneath, but instead a pitch-black hole, an entrance. Yuwen Wuxi vaulted up the stove and into the hole. Shen Qiao followed closely, his hands braced against the stone wall. Initially, he'd thought that this would be a long, deep tunnel, but he unexpectedly hit the ground right after leaping in. Looking at the room below, it seemed to be a cellar, but there were no stairs. The glow of the fire flickered to life. It was the torch in Yan Wushi's hand. Shen Qiao looked around, his expression shifting to surprise despite himself. This hidden room wasn't wasn't very large. At most, it was the size of a main hall. However, other than the one they'd entered against, the remaining 3 walls were lined with weapons after weapon, all neatly arranged. There were spears, sabers, and bows, and arrows. An expert could tell at a glance that these weapons had been forged from high-quality woods and metals. Roughly estimating, there were around 1,000 to 2,000 weapons here in total. No matter how wealthy the Huang family was and how many guards they employed, this was far beyond what they needed. Would have been excessive even if they were used to lay siege to the city. Shen Qiao couldn't help but ask, "The Huang family wishes to revolt?" Yan Wuxi didn't answer his question. Instead, he said, "The man who is together with Yun Fu Yi is called Huang Jifei. He's Huang Shidao's second son. The eldest son is sickly, so the second son is likely to succeed the family." Hey, don't look down on us sickly folk. We can make it through. Hey, Yan Wuxi. Hey, I found a secret armory. Like Chu Wu Chi. Right? Danmei is full of badass sickly men. Read a couple books about them just this break. The 2 of them followed their original tracks out of the room and returned the iron pan to its original spot. Shen Lao Shu show as well. Len Shou as well. Yeah. It was as if they'd never been here. Nothing was out of place. The 2 of them walked towards the inn after leaving the Huang residence. Runan had a curfew in place, but this meant nothing to the 2 of them. They naturally had many ways to avoid the night patrols. Yan Wuxi chuckled. "Ha ha ha. Oh, Qiao, I can see from your face that you're bursting with questions." Sorry, that's the best chuckle I got right now. Shen Qiao indeed had many questions, all intertwined with each other like tangled silk threads, impossible to separate. Didn't Shen Len Shou induce his illness? Which book? There's so many Shens. Are we talking about Martial God, or are we talking or which one are we talking? Which book? Because sometimes it's so hard to keep the Shen straight. Okay. QJJ. Okay. I have not read that one yet. Shen Qiao indeed had many questions, all intertwined with each other, like tangled silk threads, impossible to separate. He could only start from the simplest, most pressing one. How did you escape San Jingsing that day? I never fought San Jingsing that day, said Yan Wuxi. Shen Qiao thought, don't tell me that he lied to me back then. Yan Wuxi seemed to realize what he was thinking. I didn't lie to you. Before I took you to that broken-down temple, I contacted Guangling San to tell him that I wished to make a deal with him. He purposely paused. Shen Qiao was no fool, just a bit slow when it came to figuring out schemes. You're probably right, Truffle. Now he followed Yan Wushi's train of thought and found the answer. The Shu Yang strategy scroll? It was simple. Since a Fei Long Fanglan scriptures contained a flaw. Anyone cultivating from the book would run into the same obstacle. That was why Yan Wuxi had wanted the scroll. Yihuan sect had eyed it covetously, and Fa Jing sect too, naturally, could never let it slip by. After Guangling San had allied with 4 other martial artists to ambush Yan Wuxi, one would expect a deep grudge between the two. But when human machinations were afoot, things could never be that simple. The 3 demonic sects kept each other in check, and so, with the threat named San Jingsing looming ahead, Yan Wuxi had chosen to form a temporary alliance with Guangling San. It was sensible. Praise colored Yan Wuxi's tone. Indeed. I told him that if he was willing to help me out of this situation, I'd pass the entirety of the scroll's contents on to him. However, even if Yan Wuxi had calculated correctly, he couldn't be certain that Guangling San would arrive in time, or even if he'd show up as promised. Hence, he'd still chosen to go ahead by himself and leave Shen Qiao at the temple. I love when people become "that's my wife" guys. Although he didn't give Shen Qiao a direct answer, with this, Shen Qiao's doubts were resolved. For some reason, when he received this answer, it felt like a weighty stone had been lifted from his heart, which was no longer suspended in midair. Yan Wuxi mocked him then. Did you still doubt me, deep down inside? You think I'd abandoned you in order to escape? Of course, Shen Qiao would never admit that he'd wept at Yan Wuxi's retreating back. Sect leader Yan has always been this way. The slowly Taoist dares not let down his guard. Yan Wuxi gave a scoffing laugh, but didn't say anything else. After thinking for a while, Shen Qiao brought up another question. Demonic practitioners have always been mistrustful. Why would Guangling San believe that you hand him the real thing and not something you'd scrambled or modified? You've also read the scroll, said Yan Wuxi. You should still remember that it was only a commentary on Ru Yi sect's various martial arts. Tao Hongying wrote down his understandings of the demonic core's flaw, but not any details on the martial arts themselves. All he did was offer several of his opinions on how to repair the flaw. Anyone familiar with Ryue's sect's martial arts would naturally be able to tell if the contents were complete or truthful. It's immensely difficult to tamper with. Plainly speaking, no concrete martial arts were listed within the scroll. One couldn't cultivate with it. Each person would have to patch the flaw based on their own understanding. Whether or not they could make a breakthrough ultimately depended on their comprehension. Since it was a matter of life and death, even if there was only a strand of hope, Guangling Song still had to try. After all, no one would be willing to stagnate forever as a martial artist. Shen Qiao nodded. That's why you showed up at the Huang residence with Guangling Song. I told him the scroll's contents, said Yan Wuxi, but as he can't trust me completely, he wanted to find Gong's version and compare the two. During this time, I found a place and entered secluded cultivation, but I didn't expect at the moment I left to hear that Yuwen Yun had already passed. Shen Qiao sighed. That's not all. The newly enthroned emperor of Shou unjustly slaughtered Yuwen Xian's entire family. Yunen Song is the only one left. Yan Wuxi didn't seem the least bit surprised. He went on. After Guangling San verified the contents of the scroll, he met up with me and told me this news. The Huang family of Runan is raising a private army and secretly colluding with the Gok Turks. I like Xiao Qiyi's dad, due to strict but surprisingly chill about some things. Man, you're just giving me works to kind of move up in the list. I'm going to be so happy when I'm no longer sick. These were tumultuous times. One might sit on the throne today, but tomorrow another would sit there instead. This wasn't anything new. Only in the last couple decades had the situation in the world at large stabilized somewhat. It was no surprise that there were still people ambitious enough to rebel, wanting to be crowned king. However, though Yuwen Yun's killing of talented ministers makes one heart heavy, the foundation of Yuwen Yang laid out for him still exists, said Shen Qiao. Shou has also just annexed Qi. They're at the peak of their power. These weapons of the Huang family can arm at most 1 or 2,000 soldiers. Even if they can occupy Runan, I fear it'll still be useless. Yan Wushi's expression was uncanny. That's where you're wrong. The Huang family has no need to revolt. They're only the Gokturks' dogs. As long as the Gokturks toss them some scraps, they'll be able to gorge themselves endlessly. Shen Qiao found himself uncomprehending and a bit perplexed. Forgive this humble Taoist for being so slow. Now that Yuwen Yang is dead, the Gokturks have lost one of their greatest enemies, Yan Wuxi explained. They support the abolished royal family of Qi, planning to divide the north once again. Yuwen Yun completely lacks the ability to hold on to what his forefathers left him. Meanwhile, Runan has a potent military who have always protected the rightful bloodline of Shou. Now the Huang family need only stall Runan, and the imperial court would have their hands full. Especially since Yuwen Yun had already eradicated his capable generals like Yuan Xian. Under these circumstances, the Shou dynasty will be unable to stop Qi from reviving. Shen Qiao thought, why are you so happy when the Shou dynasty is suffering misfortune? Didn't you support Yuan Xian's ascension to the throne before? He asked. And now he's gone, and Huan Yue Sek's authority has been uprooted entirely. What are you going to do? Yan Wuxi blinked at him. My good Qiao, are you worried about my venerable self? Though his face didn't reveal his age, this man was already past 40, and he was still trying to act cute. It was really too shameless. Okay. All right, I'm going to blow my nose. We're going to read our last chapter. My ears pop. I'm sorry, I'm complaining a lot tonight. Feel free to continue wrecking my TBR list. All right. Chapter 90, 153. Okay. Chapter 90, Heartfelt Sincerity. Shen Qiao wasn't a good liar, so he vacillated. There you go. A while between the replies yes and no before finally shaking his head. But this momentary pause was enough for Yan Wuxi to know his real answer. Yan Wuxi never misses a chance to shade Yuwen Yang. Ooh! Finally completed my Heaven Officials Blessing collection and started book 6. Congratulations, Truffle! Taoist Master Shen, he said, there is one matter that puzzles this venerable self. He asks for enlightenment. Please, go ahead. Shen Qiao had never heard him speak in such a grave and serious tone. For a moment, he was almost terrified. Buddhism asserts that monks must not lie. Does Taoism have a similar teaching? That's fair. Shen Qiao didn't understand what he was getting at. and he began pondering the question earnestly. Taoism doesn't have restrictions as severe as those of Buddhism, but whether it's the three schools or just the average person, being truthful is a virtue for anyone with moral integrity. Then why did you shake your head when you were clearly worried about this venerable one? Asked Shen Yan Wuxi curiously. Does this not violate your principles? Taoist Master Shen, it seems you've learned all sorts of cunning after spending so long in secular society. If this continues, I fear that you'll soon be an expert at swindling and cheating others even. He was messing with Shen Qiao. Seeing that he refused to respond, Yan Wuxi knew he'd successfully ruffled Shen Qiao's feathers with his teasing. Finally satisfied enough to move on to proper topics, he said, Yuan Xian was the only descendant of the Shou dynasty qualified to inherit Yuwen Yun's mantle. If he became emperor, the Shou dynasty would have flourished for another 20 years. Unfortunately, Yuwen Yang was too short-sighted and didn't heed that advice. He insisted on passing the throne on to his son and brought about this situation today. The father passes it to his son and the son to the grandson, said Shen Qiao. This is the cycle anyone with descendants inevitably falls into. If we take a look at history, any emperor with sons never considered passing it to his brother, no matter how talented or virtuous he was. Yan Wuxi sneered. I used to think that Yuwen Yang was the exception, but it seems I overestimated him. With his unwillingness to pass the throne to Yuwen Xian and Yuwen Xian's reluctance to scheme for it, the current situation makes complete sense. All it means is that the Yuwen clan's legacy will end here. With Yuwen Yun, the Shou dynasty has passed its peak and will inevitably begin to wane. Shen Qiao nodded. Since that's the case, you must have predicted this situation long beforehand and made your preparations in advance. No wonder the manor within the capital was already deserted when I arrived. He didn't mind that Yan Wuxi had held information from him. Instead, he was happy that there hadn't been more losses. Because Bian Yanmei followed my orders and withdrew early, all that's left for Yuwen Yun and Shi Shaiting now are a couple of abandoned estates, said Yan Wuxi. It wasn't worth mentioning. You were able to leave the capital safely and without trouble because he contacted his old acquaintances in the imperial court who secretly provided assistance. Yuwen Yun was determined to eradicate Yuwen Xian's entire family, and Yunen Song was a fish that had escaped his net. The most dangerous part of Shen Qiao and Yuwen Song's journey had been when they were just leaving the capital. The farther they got from Chang'an, the safer things became, because by that time Yuwen Yun had realized that his fish had slipped into the vast oceans. It would be too difficult to chase them down. These are all good book strategies. I like them. I am reading them. Shen Qiao was no fool. After pondering to himself for a moment, he understood what Yan Wuxi was implying. So, you have no more hopes for the Yuwen family. Then you must have already chosen a new candidate for emperor. Yan Wuxi laughed. Ha 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 ha. Why didn't you guess that this venerable one would want that position for himself? Shen Qiao shook his head. You wouldn't. His reply was so decisive, even Yan Wuxi couldn't resist prodding him curiously. Why not? Shen Qiao thought to himself, you might be mercurial and egotistical, but if you wished to become emperor, you would have already unified the three demonic sects, infiltrated northern Shou, then found an opportunity to usurp the throne. Why would you have fooled around until you burned even yourself and ended up being ambushed by Shu Ting and the others? It was obvious that you were only acting on your whims. Even the throne means little to you. However, if he said this aloud, Yan Wuxi would certainly mock him endlessly, so he offhandedly said, Take a guess. Yan Wuxi didn't reply. It was rare for Shen Qiao to leave Yan Wuxi awkward and speechless. He couldn't help but smile, inordinately pleased. Not a sound accompanied the smile. It came whisper silent. When Yan Wuxi saw it, the upward curve of his own lip slowly faded. This man was far too tender-hearted, and he only remembered kindness, not enmity. A thought suddenly surfaced within Yan Wuxi's mind. If the one who'd found Shen Qiao beneath Bamboo Peak hadn't been Yan Wuxi but San Jingxing or Duan Yang, what would have happened to him? Yeah, Shen Qiao does know Yan Wuxi so well. Yan Wuxi didn't believe that it was human nature to be kind. In the past, with the goal of toying with this man's heart, he'd tested him again and again for the single purpose of unearthing the darkest parts of Shen Qiao's personality. But even after... But even after all he'd been through, with his martial arts destroyed, on the brink of losing everything and forced to start over, Shen Qiao had never changed. It was as if, no matter how many trials were forced upon him, they would never crush him. No, there were still some changes. At the very least, he now knew how to judge the best course of action, and his understanding of people and situations has sharpened. Or perhaps you could say that those various trials had been no more than a wheatstone to Shen Qiao. They'd slowly ground away all the rock concealing the lovely jade within, and now it blossomed to its full glory. And this lovely jade was none other than Shen Qiao's Taoist core. Even after thousands of temperings, his Taoist core had remained the same. Shen Qiao noticed Yan Wuxi had stopped walking, and that the man was looking at him contemplatively. Confused, he asked, "What is it?" "Nothing," said Yan Wuxi. "Just now, I finally understood something." That's awesome. Hey, libraries are there to, be read from. So if it works for two systems, use both systems. Go for it, Truffle. Said Shen Qiao. And Wuxi smiled, but didn't speak. Before, he'd loathed Ling's influence, thinking that those thoughts weren't his own. He'd tried to suppress that strange feeling numerous times, and he'd believed that the moment he repaired his flaw in the demonic core, that feeling would vanish with it. He hadn't expected that Shen Qiao's smile would reawaken everything. He was unwilling to admit that he who'd looked down upon everyone in the world would one day find that a name had wormed its way into his heart. He's starting to realize he has feelings? What? Human hearts were filled with malice. Some people were traitors, turning their backs on all integrity. Some were ingrates, repaying kindness with enmity. There were also those who'd abandoned their spouses, who were willing to do anything for wealth and glory. Yan Wuxi had seen many, and he'd thought nothing of them because he, too, was a selfish, callous human. He only categorized things based on whether they deserved his notice, and to him, there were no actions that fell beyond a line that could not be crossed. However, now Yan Wuxi was forced to admit that Shen Qiao was unique, and that he couldn't change him. Though the world was vast, there was still only one Shen Qiao. My venerable self suddenly thought of something amusing, he said. Would you like to listen? No, he said. Would you like to listen? No, said Shen Qiao. Yan Wuxi turned a deaf ear and started talking anyway. Once upon a time, there was a man who found a stone in a heap of gold and jewels. Shen Qiao's mouth twitched. Didn't he just say that he didn't want to listen? Yeah, it definitely took him long enough. But he couldn't believe that it was only an ordinary stone. He thought that since it had been placed and piled together with the mass of treasures in this room, it must also be a treasure. So he brought it everywhere with him and even had it examined and polished by many. But every single person, without exception, told him that it was only an ordinary stone, that there was nothing special about it. Guess what happened in the end? Shen Qiao's face was both lost and bewildered. In the end, he finally believed that it was indeed a worthless stone. But in his eyes, compared to the room full of gold and silver treasure, even if it was only a stone, it was still one of a kind. A stone out of a million. Shen Qiao was silent. Why did this story sound so bizarre? It was indeed unusual to hear such a normal story from an abnormal person. He couldn't help but say, even thousands of gold pieces cannot purchase happiness. Some people care little for wealth. They only wish to seek out things that other people find worthless. In my opinion, that man already liked the stone more than the other jewels and treasures, but he was trapped by his preconceptions and unwilling to admit it. And Wuxi laughed. Ha 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 ha. That's true. You're very correct. Thousands of gold pieces cannot purchase happiness. There seemed to be a deep significance within these words. But why did sect leader Yan suddenly start telling me a story? Does it have something to do with the Yuwen clan? Not at all, said Yan Wuxi. This venerable one was bored and wanted to tease you, that's all. Shen Qiao said nothing. He truly regretted his actions somewhat. He should have just left Yan Wuxi to ramble on by himself. Why had he replied to him in good faith? Enough time had passed during their conversation for the two of them to walk from the Huang residence all the way back to the inn. It was still the wee hours of the night, so the inn's gates were naturally closed, and Shen Qiao returned to his room from the same window he'd left by. Only when he saw Yuwen Song still slumbering away did he finally relax. Yan Wuxi followed him. He laid eyes on Yuwen Song upon the bed and made a surprised noise. This is my first time seeing him. Looking at the boy now, he indeed possesses an incredible talent for martial arts. His physical bases are spectacular. Yan Wuxi's standards were immensely high. For him to say his physical bases were spectacular was incredible praise. Shen Qiao smiled. Yes, he's indeed a promising youth. If he turns his energies to the martial path, he will definitely achieve great things in the future. Yeah, Yan Wuxi really is such a troll. I agree. Shen Qiao frowned. No. Yan Wuxi tapped Yuwen Song's gate of sleep, and the child fell into an even deeper sleep. Like this, their conversation would not wake him. It's enough that you know that Yun Fuyi has been in secret contact with the Huang family, he said. You need not concern yourself with it any further. Shen Qiao frowned. The Huang family have dealings with the Gokturks. This means that the Liu He Guild are also involved. Since Duo Yanshan was willing to ally with Yuwen Yang to attack you, they must have been in contact for a while. That's a separate matter, said Yan Wuxi. Whether it's news by land or water, the Liu He Guild controls most of it through cargo, escort, and boat travel. The south is full of waterways besides, so the Liu He Guild has always been close to the Chen dynasty. Unless there are mutual benefits, like when they joined hands to take care of me, Duo Yanshan will never agree to work together with the Gokturks. Shen Qiao understood. So you're saying that there's discord between Yun Fuyi and Duo Yanshan? Yan Wuxi made a sound of agreement. Ever since Yun Fuyi lost the Shuyang strategy scroll to me back at Chuyun Temple, Duo Yanshan has been dissatisfied with her. Yun Fuyi is noticed, and as she's unwilling to be reduced to a figurehead, the two of them have been fighting in secret inside the guild. After all, Yun Fuyi is only the deputy leader. Not many people would be willing to leave with her, so she naturally needs to secure outside support. So that's why she went to the Huang family, said Shen Qiao. She wishes for their help in wresting power from Duo Yanshan, and through them, she also must spoken to the Gokturks, promising her allegiance, cooperation, and a share of benefits, things like that. Correct, said Yan Wuxi. I, too, share a grudge with Duo Yanshan. Now I can sit on the mountainside and watch the tigers battle. I'll let Yun Fuyi realize her wish. She wants to become guild leader, but even if the Gokturks support her in secret, she still needs to eliminate the guild members who are loyal to Duo Yanshan. When she takes the leader's seat, the Liu Hui Guild will suffer from a shortage of manpower. There won't be enough new talent to take on the work. When the time comes, I'll give them another push. I trust that there are many people who'd leap at the chance to carve up the Liu Hui Guild's authority like they would a melon. They'll collapse like a house of cards, all without me lifting a finger. Isn't that wonderful? But once they achieve their goals, the Gok Turks might also choose to get rid of Yun Fuyi and expropriate the wealth the Liu He Guild has accumulated over the years. Probably like spread it out, like steal it. Shen Qiao pointed out. Indeed, said Yan Wuxi. It'll depend on the methods each side employs. Shen Qiao felt a little helpless. Since Guangling San also knows you don't have amnesia, why did you pretend in front of him earlier the day? First, my venerable self didn't want Guangling San to know that we're close, Yan Wuxi replied leisurely. This is to keep you safe, so you should thank me. Are you and I close? Qiao thought to himself, but he played along. I'm grateful for sect leader Yan's care. What's the second? The second reason, said Yan Wuxi, was naturally to see your dumbfounded, disbelieving, and utterly lost expression. It was quite entertaining, wasn't it? Shen Qiao didn't respond. And that is the end of chapter 90 and where we're going to end tonight. So, that was the first part of Thousand Autumns Part 4, Part 1. There we go. I forgot to do injustices to service workers, so I'll do that now at the end. We didn't have any today, which was nice. But we currently are at 5, 10, 15, 20, 21, and 1 justice for service workers. So, that is where we stand. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope it is a happy, healthy, and good memory-filled one for everyone with lots of new opportunities and prosperity. You guys deserve it. We will be back to our usual schedule of Tuesday, Thursdays at 8 CST. My hair is driving me a little crazy. And I will hopefully be less froggy come Tuesday. Thank you, Annika. And Happy New Year, Esper Lady. But yeah. I very much hope everyone's New Year is great. But good night. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you, Chi Chi Kiki. Bye-bye. And of course,